All right, week 7, we're moving on. We're getting close to the halfway point for the semester. So let's look at what we've got this week. For the lecture that you need to watch is the skeletal system part 2. Now, part 1 last week, it was mostly introduction, a lot of like microscopic structures of the bones, how bones form, how they can fracture, how they heal. And then at the very end, we started looking at the skull bones in part 1, all right? Part 2, we're going to pick up where we left off with the skull bones, and we're just going to go through and name bones and bone markings. So if you have been watching the lab videos, I know Group B didn't get to meet last week because of the delayed opening, so we'll talk about that in just a second. So if you didn't get to meet, if you've watched the lab videos, or Group A, if you did attend Monday when we had lab, a lot of this is going to sound familiar. You still need to watch it because there's extra notes that we're going to talk about. Number 1, it's just good to reinforce what we talked about in lab. But number 2, there's going to be stuff that I didn't necessarily talk about in lab, like extra notes that you need to know for the test from the part 2 video. So make sure you watch that. All right. The Learn Smart assignment, that was open last week, but you can go ahead. If you didn't do it last week, make sure that you complete that sometime this week. 3 bonus points. And that's going to be due when you take exam 2, which is next week. So that's coming up pretty soon. All right. Okay, so before we go any further, after exam 1, we did chapter 6, which was integumentary system. And then we did chapter 7, part 1 and 2. Those 3 lectures are what exam 2 is going to be on. So that's it, just chapter 6 and 7, parts 1 and 2. After you watch this week's lecture, that's all the stuff that's going to be on exam 2. So start studying. Don't wait on me. Study. Pull up your study guide. As you're going through that, if you have any questions or if something doesn't make sense, send me a message. See me after we have lab. Call me during my office hours. Get in touch with me, and I'll be glad to help you out with anything you're kind of struggling with. All right? Okay, when we meet this week, so Group A will be Monday, Group B will be Wednesday. We are going to go over the, it says pectoral and arms. Now, Group A, we did the pectoral girdle last week. We did the clavicle and the scapula, which is your shoulder blade. So we've already done that. So we're just going to pick up on the arms and start there. And then honestly, the arms won't take that long. So as soon as we're done with the arms, we're going to move with the pelvic, and we'll just see how far we can get with the bones list. All right. So just be here. 8 o'clock, we'll start going through the bones list. We'll have time to review a little bit. And remember, I'm still here from 10 o'clock to 10:45 at least. I will stay in here as long as someone is still studying and looking at the bones. Don't feel like you got to rush out because I got to go back to my office. I really don't. I can be there in the lab if you need that time to study. All right. Okay, Group B. We didn't get to meet because last Wednesday the school was delayed. So what I did was I sent you a video that you should have watched. Hopefully you've watched that. It was on the vertebrae, the thoracic skeleton, and then we talked about the pectoral girdle, so the clavicle and the scapula. I know watching that video is not the same thing as having the models in front of you. So for Wednesday, here's what I'm planning on doing. I'm going to try to get to the lab early. And I'm going to set up all the bones that we covered in that video will be laid out for you, hopefully. I'm saying this so that I'll have to hold myself to it. So like you'll have the atlas and the axis and the different vertebrae and the sternum and the ribs and all those different parts. And what we're going to do, this is going to be rapid fire really quick. We're going to go through and point them out. If you have not watched the lecture videos, we're not going to have enough time to learn these. But if you've watched the lecture videos and you took notes and you studied and you looked at the pictures, then we'll do a really quick review of everything that we watched in those videos just so you can see what it looks like on a model. All right. And then that shouldn't take long. As soon as we're done with that, we'll pick up and we'll start learning the arm bones, and then we'll go on just like Group A did. All right. So after this week, we should all be back on the same schedule. All right. So the Connect assignment this week is on the shoulders and arms. We should have covered the shoulders last week in lab, either in person or watching the video. So we will cover the arms, and then you'll have all the information you need to do that Connect assignment. All right, that's going to be due February 28th. And remember, I know I keep saying it every time, but you can take those over and over and over again until you get a 10 out of 10. There's no reason you shouldn't be getting 10 points every single week when we do these Connect assignments. All right. So the only thing we have left is just a reminder, exam 2 is next week. It's on, like we said earlier, chapter 6 and then 7, part 1 and 2. So just make sure you're studying for that. We'll meet in the same room that we did last time, the room that's a little bit before you get to the lab room. And then we'll take the test next week for that. All right. So go ahead and be studying and think of any questions you have about the lecture. We can talk about that when we meet in lab next week too. All right. That's it. If you have any questions, if you need anything, let me know and I'll be glad to help.